Welcome to Bodybuilding Unplugged,
the new podcast keeping you up to date and behind the scenes for the competitive season and beyond.
with your hosts, director and head coach of Team Poser with Hannah and competitive natural bodybuilder, Hannah Mitchell.
And DFAC Pro and multi-time British figure champion, Zena Al-Kalabi.
Tune in and let us know what you think. Hello and welcome back to episode 11 of Bodybuilding Unplugged. How are we, Z? How are you doing?
Yes, I am very good. How are you?
I am good, thank you, mate. So today we are actually going to be discussing coach hopping and training or your programming that is perfect for you, that is going to be good for you, for your progress. But before we do, we're going to have a little bit of an update because Z has just finished her mini cut. So we're going to dive straight into a little bit of a wrap-up update from Z.
A little wrap up. So yeah, I finished actually on Friday. Today is Sunday, so 2 days now of higher food, which is very much welcomed. So yeah, the mini cut for me was 13 weeks in total, and we pulled off just over 15 pounds, which we actually wanted about 20, but kind of as we started approaching the 15 pound mark, my body definitely started to show kind of like signs that it just didn't really want to push anymore. You know, when you're just kind of like hormones are starting to kind of become irregular, your like appetite and things, your training, everything was just kind of going to a point where I think fighting back, exactly. And I think, you know, not being a contest prep, pushing any further just didn't make any sense because I think we would have ended up in a hole that would have just taken quite a long time to get out of. So to be honest, very glad it's done. Had a chat with AJ after it, and you know, we've definitely had some thoughts about whether to compete next year or the year after. And given how my body was in that diet, I think potentially 26 now, but we'll see. You know, we still nothing's set, and we'll see how, you know, we respond to the reverse. But yeah, you know, it's done, and I'm glad it's over.
Yeah, and I think there's no harm in actually like saying that. I think I said the same, like when I was very ready for that diet to be done. That doesn't make if anyone listening is like ever feels that way and they're like, oh, maybe bodybuilding isn't for me, it's like that's really not the case. Like at the end of the day, it's there for a purpose, and you can have certain goals, whether it be certain like X amount of pounds to lose or resensitize, etc. Like the goalposts shift with a lot of things, and I think that shows again that it is that journey without it having to be black and white of I need to do this within X amount of time. So.
Yeah, no, 100%. And, you know, I definitely was like the last 2 days in my head, like, oh, you know, we haven't reached where we want to, like, does that mean my like body's not going to respond in the future and that? And it doesn't. Like, I've been here before, you know, for me, actually, like mini cuts are always harder, and, you know, there always comes like a random spot in them where my body's just like, oh, I'm done with this now. And it's happened last year when I did one as well. Like, I just came to a point where I was just like, we don't need to go any further because there's no purpose for it. And, you know, I'm not going to then put my body at risk of so many other problems for not really any outcome. So, you know, I think definitely the last 24 hours, I've actually kind of like come to more of a realization. But, you know, when you, in the moment, you're just like, oh, like this isn't good. Yeah. But yeah, I feel better now. So I'm just kind of like shifting the focus to strength goals, which is, you know, we've already spoken about in other episodes. So yeah.
Have you written down any strength goals? Have you got like, I don't know, like deadlifts or dumbbells or anything like that? Are you aiming for anything this block?
Do you know what? Like, I actually haven't wrote anything down, but like in my head, like the two that are like I want those back are like 30 kilo dumbbells and 100 kilo pendlay row. Like, they're the ones for me that I'm like, I feel like a boss when I do. I'm just like, yes. So like I just want like 30s over my head and to row 100, and then I don't care about the rest, whatever.
I have never even held 30s for a dumbbell press.
Yeah, but
any variation.
Yeah, but you're strong at other movements. Like I like my deadlift. We're both the same, really, aren't we? We're definitely not powerlifting people. Like, you know, I see people who's like, oh, well, I see we
stand next to like Meg Codley. It's just like, oh.
Meg, the first time she did her Cybex hack, she did like 2.5 plates, like, and she was in prep, and I was like, this is the first time you've ever been on a Cybex hack, and you're already double what I was doing. I was like, what's the point, mate?
I remember the days training with Caitlin, and I just used to give up.
I remember when you used to train with Caitlin. Yeah, it's one of those where I'm just like, it's fine, but the dumbbell press I can take on. I can take on people.
You can. Oh, I'm so excited for that, because you know what? Sorry about Izzy in the background.
Oh, bless her, little Izzy.
She's just having a moment. So it's the first time that I've done shoulder dumbbell press. I want to say like 10 years, mate.
Yeah, I haven't done one in a while.
Yeah, and I mean, what did I do this week? Oh, 17.5s, and I was gassed.
Yes. To be fair though, like, shoulder pressing dumbbells are hard because it's just that angle as well is so much going through your shoulder.
Yes, yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I'm excited. Hopefully he'll put them back in, but I don't even know.
Yeah. To be fair, this actually does segue very well into finding the right training program for you, which we didn't actually mean. That wasn't that wasn't scripted.
Just right on cue.
Yeah, so maybe we'll speak about this bit first instead of the coach side, and we can come back, like circle back to the coach swapping, coach hopping kind of side of things as well. So with that, obviously we've just spoken about the fact that we're not necessarily like strong athletes, or aiming for strength within multiple different movements, but obviously we still want to move a good amount of weight that's going to give us a good amount of stimulus, right? Now you have a handful of clients as well, right? And it might be worth you even starting off speaking through maybe the kind of considerations that you take into when you're programming for a client.
Yeah, no, for sure. So I think like it would be probably a good place to start that we can both talk about as well is like the actual split to start with, and then we can go like deeper in. So like one thing, you know, I was thinking about before we came on is like how yours has probably changed as well, but like my training split has changed a fair few times over, you know, the last few years. Like, you know, I always remember it was always push pull legs in a row, rest, push pull legs in a row. But now the kind of like most common would be like push pull rest legs rest. So I think that's definitely like a trend we've seen like in general. But actually when I was with 3DMJ, I ran an upper lower split, and that was like a 7-day split, which again, that is something that I've programmed some of the clients I have. So I think for me, I don't know, are you on a weekly split or are you on a rolling split?
No, so mine's like an 8-day, but I think as much as I would absolutely adore to have like a 7-day split, because, you know, it just means that you know exactly what days you're resting, exactly what days you're training. You can plan your life around those things as well. So it would be great. And I think for certain individuals, it is a really great thing to do, especially if they've got like really long shifts, like 12-hour shifts and things like that. But yeah, what about you?
Yeah, so I'm rolling at the moment. Do you know what? I was on a 7-day split with Brian last year, and I really enjoyed it for that reason. You know, I always knew like what day I was doing what, and that kind of helped with planning. I would always know like on a weekend, like I was training because there was less chance I was working on a weekend than in the week and things like that. But for me, the problem with a 7-day split is it just kind of provided like no flexibility. So if I had to kind of like swap a session for a certain reason, or I needed an extra rest day, or, you know, something cropped up, or I was working on the weekend, I felt like I couldn't adjust the split because then it would be kind of like out of line, and then it would all be like a 7-day split on the wrong days. And that kind of like stressed me out a little bit. Whereas I think when you have a rolling split, like the two positives for me are you can be flexible, you can definitely be more flexible, but also it means like different sessions get like their time on different kind of weeks. So some weeks, you know, this leg session will end up being 5 o'clock in the morning, and then I kind of almost approach the session differently to how I would approach it today, but the session kind of always has a chance of being on a weekend rather than like the same sessions. So yeah, I mean, for me, I think a rolling split is definitely like favourable, but yeah, definitely not for everyone. Like, you know, like we said, if someone like needs their routine and their job is like always the same,
Yeah.
then yeah, I guess 7 days is a pretty good one.
Yeah, I completely agree there, you know, actually saying that, because we had a 7 day split for a really, really short period of time. And I did, now you've said it, like I did definitely be like, oh no, I couldn't take like an extra rest day, because then I'd have to rearrange absolutely every single week to
Everything.
follow that,
Yeah.
you know, you may have already put plans in place for training with certain things. So yeah, no, that is such a good shout. I think so. Another thing to obviously consider as well, I am actually now, I'm actually quite anal with, I don't change my sessions in terms of like rest days, only because I genuinely find that I just can't.
Mm,
Like, I've tried to previously be like, oh, okay, say if I've got something planned. I mean, I still do it here and there, like say if I'm going on holiday or
yeah.
things like that. And I'm like, okay, I'll miss a rest day. I'll like do one additional session,
Hmm.
one additional session, instead of having like that rest day, and then like bring everything at one day closer, etc. But I definitely, I see the impact. Like, I
Yeah.
feel absolutely fucked, and
Yeah.
I do find my performance is like affected just by
For sure.
changing that one rest day.
It's mad, isn't it? Like, yeah, in this diet, like, obviously, my diet and yours as well was all through like show season. So, you know, I would quite often have to manipulate like training for like the show days. And
Yeah.
one thing that like AJ would always say to me, he's like, never ever cram, like, extend if anything. So, you know, if we were
Right.
moving any sessions around, it would always be like an extra rest day in, as opposed to
Mm-hmm.
putting like 3 sessions together. Because, like you know, if I end up doing more sessions in a row than what I've kind of previously done or planned for, like, the sessions quality is awful and I feel fucked, like,
Yeah.
so bad. So
Yeah.
yeah, it's kind of like it's nice to have the flexibility, but then I also hate taking 2 rest days in a row. So it's like,
Yeah.
I know what you mean. Like, it's definitely, you know, very rare that I would do that anyway, but I kind of like the option of it.
Yes. Yeah.
But
Yeah. Yeah.
you
For
know,
sure.
because sometimes, and you're the same, like, now work will be on a weekend, it'll be on a weekday, it's any time. Like, I don't even differentiate weekends and weekdays anymore. Like, they're all just
No.
days, you know. And the same for you, the same for, like, I guess, like any online coach, any shift workers. Like, you don't even have Monday to Friday and then the weekend. It's just you have seven
No.
days. You know?
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah, I do kind of like it that way. You know what I
Yeah,
mean? Like, I
you're
remember a
living for the
time.
weekend.
Yeah, yeah, I remember a time when I'd like live for the weekend, and I do think it's quite a like a difficult mindset to be in. And I feel like it. I don't want to call it toxic, because that does sound a little bit like a bit much, but I do find that if you are kind of constantly living for the weekend, like, what are you doing then? Like,
Yeah,
don't live that week. If you don't want the week, then you need to change it. Like,
yeah.
but obviously that's a very different subject, and I could
And
get
what
very
is
much into.
your split at the moment? Are you running push-pull legs as well?
Yeah, so this is where it's probably going to be a little different to yours, only because I can't do 3 on.
Yeah.
So I tried to do 3 on, 1 off, and I kept pushing for it, like, because I was like, yeah, because, you know, you just want to be in the gym, don't
I
you?
can't either. I have 2 and then a rest day.
Yeah. So, and we did it for a good amount of weeks, but I needed to deload in like 4, and I
Yeah,
was like,
that's it, isn't
oh.
it? It's just,
But it's almost like not a compliment, but it does just show that you are obviously like training, working hard. But I am currently doing. It sounds very bro when I say it out loud. So it's pushing arms, back delts and biceps, rest, pushing arms, posterior density, whatever you want to call it, rest. Oh my god, that's wrong. Wait. I've been doing this setup for
oh my god,
26 weeks. Wait.
what is
Push
it?
It's pushing arms, um legs, rest, push and arms, density, rest, pull, delts, biceps,
Oh my god,
rest.
that's complicated.
Yes, yeah. So when you think about it, I've got like push and arms and then something that's lower half
Yeah.
ish, and then rest, and then repeat,
Fine.
and then rest, and then pull is like on its own.
Nice. Wow, that sounds pretty good. Mine
Yeah,
is basic, like push, pull, rest, legs, rest. Which
repeat.
yeah, I like it because I feel like I can kind of like my sessions aren't overly long, which for me is actually really beneficial because when it starts to get to like 1 to 1.5 hour mark, like I am actually just a bit done with my session. I'm not someone that can stay in the gym for like 3 4 hours, and I think when I used to do an upper lower split, because you're almost trying to get a lot more into your upper sessions, like they ended up being like quite long, and then
Mm-hmm.
you actually run the risk of them starting to become like unproductive if you
Yeah,
don't have the time or you start rushing or things like that. So yeah, for me, I kind of like it, spread out. But
yeah,
I think like when people do run an upper lower split, I think it's really good for like people that are like almost new to bodybuilding or new to the gym to
yeah,
kind of just get like not put too much pressure on so many sessions. It's easier, and I
yeah.
think sometimes when you're just kind of finding your feet with it, that split can work really well. What do you think?
Do you have an A and a B?
Yeah,
Yeah, so you do pretty much have like, if anything, you've just got an additional pull session.
yeah,
And I like merge my legs with a pull, if
yeah.
that makes
Nice.
sense.
Yeah, quite a lot. To be fair, I've got like my RDL is in my leg session, so it's kind of
Yeah.
similar.
Yeah, it might, yeah, you could call one of your leg sessions like a
Leg
density, I
pull. Yeah,
suppose.
if I
Yeah,
wanted
yeah.
to.
I
Yeah.
think so. I don't need much quad work. so so I have legs once every 8 days.
Yeah. Nice. Yeah.
But
Pretty good.
to be fair, though, I think this actually might be a good subject and something for people to think about. Is like, even though that sounds like such a long period of time, like obviously, yes, density. I do hamstring curl. I do a leg press, but it is more like hamstring glute bias, and
Yeah.
then I do barbell hip thrusts.
Mhm.
So like they're obviously, and then SLDLs or like
Yeah.
RDLs or whatever. I've been crying for deadlifts, like proper deadlifts, but no.
What's Cuba
Um,
doing?
what?
What's Cuba doing?
I know.
Putting in, mate.
He's like, you need like real, like actual gluten ham. I'm like, I know, because for me, deadlifts, I'm literally like, hello, here is all my back.
Yeah. Oh, that's so funny.
I'm
Yeah, I've
so
got
much
an
for it.
RDL in at the moment for the same reason.
Yeah, yeah. Um. Oh no, now I got too excited about deadlifts and I've completely lost my train of thought. Fuck.
Yeah. Hannah's just tapped out already. You were going on about your sessions of where you've got kind of your quads every 8 days, but not really.
Oh yeah. So with having it every 8 days, almost like I get so excited for legs,
Yeah, I like that.
and
Because then you end
you know
up
what I
putting more
mean.
into it.
I'm literally like fully send because I've got one opportunity every
Yeah,
8 days.
yeah,
And for me, I'll be honest, as much as I love legs to an extent, it's not a session I look forward to.
mm,
Like when I'm in it, I love it, but it's not a session like, oh yeah, like let's
let's go.
go.
Yeah,
Yeah, for me, it's pushing arms. Like I just
yeah.
love thinking about pushing arms.
I love push
So
as well.
yeah. So I think having that split without maybe even doing it for this reason, like it's not that Kuba's been like, oh, she likes this, so I'm going to plan it this
Mm,
way. But it's worked out also that because of how much like I enjoy that frequency, like
yeah.
I really like the fact that I have pushed so often,
Yeah. And do you know
you
what?
know?
I think it's like such an important point for like people listening of like how it's like it's kind of like a collaborative effort between you and your coach because ultimately like they're in control of making sure like in your program you have everything that you need to be
Yeah.
a better bodybuilder. Like this
Yeah.
isn't just, let's program training with like no consideration to what that individual athletes need. And when me and you started bodybuilding, I know you know this, like we used to get sent the same training plan as everybody else. Everyone would get the exact same thing and you'd all do that. But realistically, like with like the evolution of like bodybuilding coaching and things like that, is every single plan is tailored towards you and towards what you need. So every single person's is going to be different because everyone needs different areas. Like I need more backs and I need less quads. So I'm similar to you in that sense of my quads are actually only like once every 10 days, like direct. But then obviously it's also that you need to enjoy it, because the only program you'll stick to and work hard at is a program that you like genuinely enjoy. So, sometimes like AJ would be like, oh, what do you think about this movement versus this movement? And I would be like, well, I actually really prefer this. And I think like I can get more out of it. So that movement is the better movement for me, but that might not be the best movement for you. So it's kind of like, I think, having like a collaborative discussion with your coach is so important.
Yeah, no, definitely. Because even little things, which I'm sure we're going to get into, of like when to change, when to swap out certain movements.
Yeah.
But I had stalled for a little bit within those SLDLs.
Yeah.
But I was also in a diet for 16 weeks, mate. And so instead of just being like, oh, well, let's take them out because you've stalled, he did say, like, are there movements that like you're not progressing in, blah, blah, blah. And we like reassessed at a certain point. It was a couple of weeks back. And that's when we like bought dumbbells back in and, things like that. But there were certain movements that, yes, I hadn't progressed for a while, but I was enjoying striving for that. So like the SLDL, like I'm still only doing 100 kilo. People lift so much more than that, but I'm really enjoying like really trying to grind out another rep with that. And it's a movement that I haven't been able to kind of drive up for a period of time. And I think having that thought process behind it of like knowing that my glutes and hamstrings are such a focus, I do really like having it in, because I'm like, yeah, this is directly like killing them off.
Getting what you need out of it, and you're still enjoying it. So I mean, like I guess it'd be a good time to go on to like when to change like movements and things like that. Because I definitely had the same, where like a movement isn't really moving very much, but like I still feel like I'm getting a lot out of it. And like it's maybe in the logbook it's like plus 1 rep, minus 1 rep, plus 2 kilos, minus 2 kilos. But like I think again it's like the importance of also videoing the set, because a plus 1 rep but like way better form, you are getting so much more out of that, even though on paper it's just like plus 1 rep. And the same with like occasionally I'll just like take a little bit of weight off on like a leg press, like particularly like a pivotal, but I'll get like an inch more depth, and it's like that is actually like, even though the logbook says I've regressed, like I actually haven't. But then for me, like there's been certain movements like my Smith machine press where like every single week it was just going like nowhere, and I didn't feel like I was getting anything out of it. So then I was like, this needs to be altered, and whether or not that's changed the movement or changed the reps or changed the intensity. And one thing that AJ quite likes to do is swap the sets around. So I actually do like a higher rep set first, just to kind of like get into it, and then do like my like lower rep, heavier weight second. And actually Brian did that quite a lot with me as well. And I had never really done it before last year, but that works sometimes. Although like mentally it's a bit psych, because you're like doing your high rep set and then you've got to put weight on, and it's like, what?
You know what? I played around a little bit myself with things like that for movements such as like lateral raises and triceps. Because they were both things, obviously being like longer limbed, I have found that my connection, especially with like my tricep movements, so like I love how I'm actually doing it.
You're actually doing it. I get this one on the YouTube. Hannah's doing the tricep push down in the video.
Just to demonstrate and let me get my assist your lift bar. But yeah, like I actually found sometimes kind of going a little bit heavier and kind of like feeling that, and maybe doing a bit of a buddy set, you know what I mean, for your first set, doing a bit of a buddy to like feel it, and then actually taking the weight like down instead, and like really slow and controlled, like little things like that. I have kind of like played around with, or the flip side of doing a really high rep. So for lat raises, like really high rep, like almost 20 reps for that first set.
Yeah.
And then going into like a little bit heavier and doing maybe like 10, 12, 15, you know, things like that. And it's been, it's been very good for me particularly. So with, obviously we mentioned about the certain movements that we've also within our diets, we mentioned about dumbbell presses right at the beginning. Do you go into a diet and alter it straight away and take it out straight away, or do you see how you feel?
Yeah. So I go into a diet because obviously, like, you'll be the same. Like, we've dieted multiple times, so it's like I go in knowing that isn't gonna stay around forever. But I don't go in and change things straight away because ultimately,
Right.
like, I actually find like the first 10 pounds of any diet, like I'm actually way more productive than kind of like the end of a push up. So when
Really?
when I start to diet, like that initial phase, I actually find like I'm way better all around because I don't know what it is, like it just happens every time. So I keep things in for the start. And I actually think that's when I hit the 30s this year, like on the way back down. But I
Wow.
mean, yeah, the first like, I hit him once on the way up, once on the way down, I think, and that was it. But the first thing to go is like my stabilization in push. You know, like I can't stabilize like the dumbbells as well, and they're just like not safe anymore. So I do like take a few weeks of like a load decrease, but then once I start, you know, getting on the bench and like wobbling around, and I'm just like,
Literally
yeah.
throwing it.
And with someone that's had like bilateral shoulder injuries, I have to be kind of probably more cautious than I would like otherwise, because in my head I'm like, I can't risk injuring them again, you know? So yeah, I go into it with everything, and then just kind of as things start to like destabilize, swap them. And it's the same with like, we took out my deadlift and put in an RDL just from like a, don't have the body weight to like back me right now. What about you? What do you normally do?
We do almost the opposite.
Really?
Like literally take them out straight away.
Straight away.
Because we almost do that thought process of let's not go into sessions and get like demoralized or like almost. I think I am very stubborn.
Yeah.
And Cuba does have to prompt me a lot, being like, how is your performance?
Yeah.
Because else I'm just like, it's fine.
It's fine.
It's
Yeah.
fine. Like,
Just more.
I'm pushing as much as I can within every single set. Like, surely that's all you need to know.
Yeah.
But obviously it's not. Like,
Yeah.
so I'm not, I do need to like probably be better at communicating when like movements aren't maybe progressing and stuff. But yeah, like if I'm just enjoying it, then I'll just do it. So that he does take them out like straight away. Again, though, when you think about it biomechanically, again, I know I mention it like all the time, but like things like a dumbbell press for me are
So fast
already very
travel.
difficult.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
Exactly. Long limbs.
yeah, so for a dumbbell press, even in off season, like it takes so much like mental strength.
You have to
So
move. The thing is like you do genuinely have to move the weight so much further. And like, you know, people are like, oh, it's just like an excuse that it's actually not. Like you are almost moving the weight double the distance of what I'm moving it. So it's like, you know, and I think especially with like dumbbell pressing is it's not just moving the weight. The worst part is like getting them to the starting point. And like because we both train alone a lot of the time, like that is almost like the most injury prone place. So then if you're flying at those dumbbells to the starting position, which for you is obviously higher than my starting position, like there's so much that can go wrong in that like phase. And, you know, I always like plug the natural bodybuilding, but we just don't have the capacity to like hold it the same way as someone assisted would or recover from it, you know?
That is the other side as well. Like I think the reason why we do like swap them out straight away, again, there's no like right or wrong at all. Anyone listening thinking like what should they do, you will find what works best for you. And I think previously we haven't taken them out straight away, and I have just like kept pushing but like just regress so much every single week, and it's just almost then a waste of that set
when you
like
could be supported by like a machine or something like that. Just like a lot safer. But I think it's actually kind of good that we do opposite things, because it shows like people listening, like, you know, there is actually there's so many ways to like skin a cat, as they say, like, and we are the perfect example of just like opposite in most things really that we do. So, you know, there definitely is no right or wrong of like when to change your training, when to change your split, what split to do. But hopefully this is like gives perspective of, you know, everyone's different, but you should think about it from like your own standpoint, like, you know, like you've done, and trial and experience, like, you know,
massive. Like
so
we've literally just detailed like how
exactly,
I've
like
attempted how many different splits, how at different rest days. Like there is also points within kind of your journey where you will be able to do something. So for example, peak off season, if I do swap around my days, I'll be fine, right? But it's more so right now where I do notice a difference. Like even this past week, I only had a deload 5 weeks ago, and like my sessions this week, I could not even imagine training tomorrow. I'm in bits right now. And like, you know, where it's like, I can't even tell you what.
Yeah, that's actually a good point. How often do you need a deload?
That is such a good point, because I think, do you program them in?
Well, I can. You talk about yours, and I'll talk about
Okay.
mine.
Okay, I'll go first. So we don't like program them in.
Yeah.
We do take it like as it comes. And it can vary. And that is simply down to the fact that so many people think deloads are just physical.
Yeah.
Deloads are also mental, right? So say for example, I have had like the world's busiest like month. Like I've barely slept, maybe, like loads of different aspects come into not just your performance, but like your energy and everything, right? But also like, again, your mental capacity. So even stress, like say if you've had a life incident happen, and there's stress that comes into play, so there's so many things that are going to kind of lead you into potentially having a deload. It's not just whether you've performed well in the gym or not. But yeah, mate, I only had a deload 5 weeks ago, and I think the one before that, it was 8 weeks. And I do find that it is usually like every maybe 7 to 9, I'd say. But I think the reason why it's been, we are probably going to take a deload either this week or next, I can imagine. I think it's coming out of the diet phase, and I have my training's been felt very good. Like for example, this week, how I know that I'm coming close to it, I was doing my push session, pushing through my feet, and my legs were in agony.
Oh no.
Because I was like, you know, when you're trying to stabilize, and I was like, like
it's
hurting
hard.
in that sense.
Yeah, so I'm like similar but different in a way. So I've actually had a very long past experience of running too far. So like if I was, you know, left to my complete own devices, I just end up training and training and training, and then I go into the biggest hole you could ever imagine, and then take like weeks and weeks and weeks to recover from it. And I think my first like 2 or 3 years of bodybuilding, that would happen. So I'm like you, like I'm super stubborn. So I'd kind of get to the point where like things were starting to like feel bad, but I would just be like, it's fine. Like, oh, it doesn't matter. Like, it's fine. And then I would actually find myself like in a place where I was like, wow. And then it'd actually take me like a good month to get out of that place. So, you know, with Brian and with AJ, what we do is like we kind of pre-plan them to a certain extent. So we always know that between 8 and 9 weeks is when I will need a deload. But it's like we know that from like trial and error of kind of when I start to kind of see the signs and things. So we kind of think in our heads like this is going to run for 8 to 9 weeks, but the exact moment that we call it is always based on like me recognizing the signs.
Feedback.
Yeah, exactly. And like to be fair, like routinely by week 8, sleep starts to get a little bit worse, recovery starts to get a little bit worse, I actually tend to mentally start tapping out. Like I find myself like not wanting to go to the gym, or like I'm just like I just can't be bothered for this session. And for me, that's signs of like I'm fatigued right now, because I love training. So for me not to want to train is like, okay, no, like I need a break.
Actually,
So
I do have a question.
yeah,
I don't know if this is just me.
yeah,
I get really emotional.
yeah,
So like in my training session, and this is typically the session when I'll actually call it.
call it.
I'll be, say I'm doing like, I don't know, a leg press or
Yeah,
something. I'll literally be crying because I'm
really.
like, I feel like a lettuce, and I'm
Yeah.
like, and I'm like, oh, okay, maybe I
Okay,
need to, you know.
yeah. So I don't get like, I don't cry or get that kind of emotional. I'll get
Yeah.
like like I don't really want to train today, but then I'll go and it'll be like all right. But then the one that like ticks the boxes, I'm like, I don't really want to train today, and then I'll go there and like nothing moves. Like I can't press even like I can't press like anything close to what I would on the Smith, or I can't even do like a normal tricep extension, and I'm like, okay, this is the session. And to be fair, it probably should have called it the one before, but I always like to wait to make sure. So we normally always go like one session over. Like I did legs at the shed the week before last, and I was like, I know in my head that this should be the session before the deload, but then I did one more.
Oh, that's so upsetting when it's at the shed as well.
I know. So I did. No, that session was good. That session was really good. So I was like, it's
Right.
fine. Yeah. That session was great. And then I went back in for push on the Saturday, and I was like, okay, I'm not okay. Yeah, I don't know about you, but then I always take like 3 days off, 3 days devolume, then just go back into it. And again, I've tried everything. I've tried taking a week off. I've tried taking a week of devolume, but like I really need the mental break from the gym. So I find it just like I need at least 3 days off.
I've done different approaches. So I've definitely done where I still go to the gym and I just do devolume and like RIR, whatever. But I definitely think the best approach for me is coming away, at least, say if I've got a rest day anyway the next day or something, at least 2 more additional
Yeah,
rest days.
yeah,
But I do find mentally, and I'm not just saying this to be cool, like I really struggle to stay away from the gym for any longer than that.
yeah,
Regardless if I'm like away and things like that. I don't know if it's because living on my own,
yeah,
things like that, like especially now working not necessarily in an in an actual workplace, like
yeah,
I definitely I find myself not in a great place
yeah,
if I don't do something. And it
yeah,
might be also the fact that, routine, and also like because I don't like do cardio, things like that. So it's probably just
yeah.
mentally I just need to
I'm.
kind of
Do you know
do
what?
a bit of movement.
Yeah, like I'm actually the exact same in the sense that if I have like more than 3 days away, even if I need them, like,
Yeah.
most of the time when I go back for my devolume sessions, I'm not physically ready to go back to the gym, but
No.
I'm actually a horrible person if I don't train.
Yeah.
Like, but I actually can't help it. Like, I start to get really snappy
Yeah.
at home, at work. Like, if I haven't been to the gym and had that like hour, 2 hours of like, I'm just here like doing my own thing, like I get really ratty, and I can't help myself. So
Yeah.
I'm almost like, and I see people like, why would you bother like going for a devolume session? But like that's my like mental pivot back into full volume, because otherwise like just lose my head.
Yeah. And if anything as well, like I do think devolume sessions, I completely agree. I'll end up going into the gym and I'm like, so not ready to be
Yeah.
doing proper sessions. But say the devolume, you go in, you're there like, well, I'm typically
Hours
there like
on
under an hour. Do you know what I
Yeah,
mean? Like you're in
yeah,
and out, but it's still movement. It's
yeah,
still something you enjoy. And also, I kind of feel like after maybe the second devolume, I'm there like, oh yeah, I'm almost there.
I'm always
And you
there.
can
Yeah,
feel yourself like getting a little bit more like oof into a
ready.
set, and you're like, there we go. Whereas if
Yeah,
I just went in like after a week off, I
you'd
feel
be
like you'd almost not, you wouldn't have to relearn how to lift, but I just feel like you would have to have some form of devolume
Yeah,
anyway
for sure.
to
Because
kind
you
of get
wouldn't
into the groove.
be also like, if you take a week off and you go back to full volume, like your fatigue level is
You'll
so
mash
high,
yourself.
you'll need
Yeah.
another deload. So like,
Yeah.
if you take a week off, you kind of then need a week devolume anyway.
And then
So
that's 2 weeks.
that's
Like,
2 weeks. Yeah. But then also, if you end up being like old Zena and push your like cycle too far to the
yeah.
point where like you're so fucked, like
Mhm.
you're gonna need a week off and you're gonna have to take that,
Yeah.
It just depends. Like I think once you're at our stage of like lifting and how long we've been doing it, we know exactly when we need to take a break and we know exactly when, to go back. But that takes 4 or 5 years to learn. It's not
It
something that
does.
you can't just do that the first time, and if you can, then you're a magician.
Yeah, or you're just lying. The other thing, the other thing to note as well is like, don't be embarrassed if you don't need a deload like every 8, 9 weeks or whatever
Yeah,
it is, because I've heard people before be like, oh yeah, like, oh yeah, I'm having a deload, because it's been 8 weeks. It's like, genuinely, like, we all know training is a skill. Training
yeah,
to failure is a skill. And again, we're not saying this to sound like we know everything, but we've been in this a very, very long time, and it's taken us a long time to get to a training level that we
yeah,
then need those deloads.
yeah.
Like,
Like I didn't deload for the first 2 years of training. So it's like,
mate, I
I
probably
know
didn't for
training.
10 years. Do you know what I mean? I was
I
just
know.
like, lol. I'll
I
just have
know.
a burger.
Yeah, it's fine. It's fine.
So, there are different points within your journey where you're going to be progressing within your training, progressing within how you're lifting, and then you will need those deloads. So yeah,
Yeah,
don't feel like you need to do it every 8, 9 weeks because other people do, or every 6 weeks as some people do, because they might need those because they genuinely train that hard
yeah,
and their jobs are that hard and their
yeah.
mental stresses are that hard, and because everyone's lives are so different. So
Exactly.
if you are running like a 12-week block and you're feeling fine, like, it is the way it is.
Exactly. And again, like I know, we're battling on about it, but like natural versus assisted as well. Like as like a natural athlete, you're not gonna have the same recovery capability. So like,
Yeah.
if you've got assisted friends, like, yeah, okay, they may be able to run like twice as long as you, but they've got support that you don't have. So it's
Yeah.
like there's so many things to consider, and it's like there
Yeah.
definitely isn't one size fits all. And when I did like reps and reserve training, like I could go longer because I wasn't so fatigued. But
Yeah.
when you train like
Of course.
to failure and your body's like at this point, it's just yeah, it's just learning, isn't it? Learning about what is right for like each individual.
Yeah. And also, like, if people start giving you jip for needing a deload or taking time off and things like that, like, yeah, just bin them. Like,
Bin 'em,
just bin
bin 'em. Right. Should
them.
we go on to topic 2?
Yeah, I
Yeah.
think so. I think that'll be really, really good. But
Yeah.
regardless, if you are at the end of this podcast, thank you so much for listening, guys. We hope that you did enjoy it. We hope that you took a lot from it. Thank you for the people who did input their suggestions for topics.
Yeah.
That was obviously amazing. And we are going to keep putting those up weekly so that we can get as many topics from you as possible. But feel free to always message us regardless. Don't feel like you have to wait for the box. But please give us a follow, share, like, comment. Let us know your thoughts as well. Any final remarks?
No, just yeah, thank you for listening as always, and everything Hannah's already said. The support. We do this for fun, but every single person that shares and things, like, it obviously does mean a lot every time we see it. So
Yeah.
please, if you're thinking about it, just do it. And yeah, we will catch you in the next episode, which we will kind of decide and yeah, hopefully pick another great topic for you guys.
Peace.